Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a chess game that I just played right now, which is probably one of the worst games that I've played in a very, very long time. This is genuinely awful, and it just becomes awful at the first move. My opponent starts off this game with the beautiful, amazing move h4. Saying already that he thinks that I'm really bad at the chess, and he thinks that he's going to win right away, because of course h4 is a stupid move. Nobody plays this move who actually knows what they're doing, and I decided to immediately strike in the center like a normal person because I want to actually win the chess game, and I played the move d5. Sorry, this is not reviewed. Give me a second. I need to add some notation. There we go. d5. My opponent goes c4, and this already I realized, okay, well, c4, my opponent wasted a turn on move 1. What am I going to do now? I'm going to realize, okay, well, if I'm playing white in this position, and let's say I'm playing white in this position, I go d4, and my opponent goes c5. What is the move that I normally play? I normally go d5, the old Benoni, right? And I get a decent game. So I'm like, okay, well, if my opponent's going to do that and play c4, I'm just going to treat this like an old Benoni. I'm just going to play the move d4, and I'm going to argue that, okay, my opponent wasted a turn on move 1. Actually, h4 is bad for him, is worse for him than helps him, if anything, because now you're giving me the g4 square in many lines, and I'm just saying, well, then I'm going to have a better position. My opponent goes knight f3. I go with the move c5, which I thought was the correct move here in theory. I could have also just played knight f6, which makes sense, but anyway, c5. My opponent goes d3, and I play the move knight c6. Trying immediately to play the move e5, strike in the center, and have a very, very good game. My opponent here plays e4, allowing an en passant, which is common, and of course if I was like 1,000, I would play this move immediately, because whenever you can en passant, you gotta en passant. But in this case, it's not actually that good, because if you take en passant here, then white gets some development with the pieces, and you've lost your control in the center. So you can't do that in this position, and this is just a normal tactic in many old Benoni positions. So I was like, okay, well, if I can't end peasant here, what am I going to do? I'm going to try and play this like I would normally, but there's one little detail. The pawn on h4 might become a problem in some lines, so I was like, is this really what I want? Maybe I can play e5 and play it normally, but I was like a little bit worried that my opponent might try to use the pawn, trying to go down. Maybe he would have something over here in some lines, and I was just like not too happy with it. So I was like, you know what, h4 weakened, the g4 square. Let's put a bishop on g4. My next move is going to be e5. Maybe I'm going to play the move knight to e5 at some point, and I'm just going to try to play this normally. Okay, my opponent goes bishop e2. And I realized, well, now I can't play e5. This was a very nice move of his, just to insert this move bishop e2, because e5 now doesn't work due to the move knight takes d4, opening up attack on the bishop, sacrificing the knight. But if I take, I lose the bishop, and if I try to take this, my opponent's just going to come back with a knight and be up a pawn. So we can't do that. So I realized this, and I of course play the best move. I go h5. My opponent goes bishop f4. And after the move g6, which I thought was kind of interesting, trying to get my bishop out this way, the position kind of goes a little crazy. My normal plan in these positions is that I want to play e5. e5 is what black wants to do. If I'm not able to play e5, then I'm probably just going to have a worse position, and in this case, I'm not able to play e5, so there might be a line here, like bishop g7 and then e5. Then you have to consider, like, well, the bishop doesn't belong in g7 then, because it's just blocked by its own pawns. So do we really want to play with the bishop on g7? Not really. What we would rather want to do is trade off the dark sword bishop, take back with the knight, and then play e5 afterwards, arguing that, okay, in that position, we're going to be doing a lot better. But then you're like, what if my opponent has something else? So you go back to the bishop g7 idea. Or even f6. f6 is another line here, but I was worried about f6 because it just doesn't look correct. For example, if after the move knight bd2, which is what my opponent played, I could play the move f6, but I thought this wasn't very good because of e5, and I was just unsure of whether this was what I wanted. Of course, this doesn't exactly lose a pawn. This would lose me the game, because my king is actually very, very wide open. If I go like this, bishop takes, I guess, rook h7 or something. Already, I'm losing a pawn, and all of his pieces are in the game, and I would be losing the game. So we can't do that, and I tried to figure out something better. So I ended up with playing the move bishop h6, which is the best move, offering a trade of bishops, and I was really, really hoping he would take. I was really, really hoping he'd be like, oh, well, if I trade, then maybe his knight's offsides. And I was just like, oh, please, please do this. Because actually the knight is not that bad. I can castle and play e5 immediately, and black would be doing very, very well. But instead he declined and played bishop g3, which for some reason I just didn't look at in my calculations. I just wasn't realizing this was a thing. And now I have to find a new plan, and I could not for the life of me find a new plan. I thought of some things. I was like, okay, I can put the bishop back on g7, but is that really what I want? No, I don't want to put the bishop on g7. I like my bishop where it is. I don't think that it deserves to be on g7. g7 is actually the best move. Bishop to g7 is actually the best move. I could put the knight on f6, but I feel like that walks right into e5. I don't want to get into that. So I was like, I was looking at queen b6, queen a5 in some lines, trying to put pressure on this knight, maybe get some stuff going around here. Knight f6, trying to get the knight up there. Queen b6 to target this, but I just wasn't sure if that was any good after like a move like queen b3, and I was like, again. I was looking at this move, but I'm like, why is the knight being allowed to be here? That also seems stupid, and I just couldn't find a plan for the life of me, so I ended up just playing this kind of lazy move, the move a6, which just doesn't do anything. The idea is that maybe in the future I have b5, but for now, it's just not a move that works at all. And my next couple of moves here are really stupid, actually. My opponent goes a3. Okay, I don't really understand this move. I guess it's the same thing. You don't really have a plan, but white can always castle. I guess castling is a little bit scary since all my pieces are on the side of the board. But, you know, I then thought of trying to do something else. But this was when I got a little bit too crazy. I was like, the knight doesn't want to be on f6 because of e5. I don't like that. I don't want him to get e5. So I did something a lot worse. I was like, what's the second best square for my knight? The e7 square. Let's go e6. And this immediately gives gives white a very, very strong advantage. This is everything that black has built up. And now my position is just bad. Because what is the knight doing on e7? Are we playing for f5? Not really, because my king is stuck in the center. It's just a bad position. It's just a bad position. And I'm giving him all these dark squares towards my rook. Everything is weak. Everything is weak. Swiss cheese up here. So I'm trying to do something correct. But then my opponent gives me a little bit of hope. He plays the move castles. And I finally am able to figure out a plan for myself. Because castling kind of just set the alarm bells off. I'm like, well, I have all these pieces over on this side of the board. I got 5 out of my 7 pieces on this side of the board. It feels like to me that I'm going to be getting a ton of play here on his castled king, since he only has like 2 or 3 defenders, if you can count that one. So I was thinking. I end up playing knight g7 because it was the point of that, and I'm like, maybe I play f5 in the future. Maybe I put pressure on these pieces. I don't know. It might be interesting. And my opponent plays a massive, massive mistake with the move e5. And now I'm thinking black is already like winning. Black is already basically winning. The point of e5, which I saw, which happens later, is that my opponent wants to get the knight up here into the f6 square, which is reasonable. But I ended up not really believing that was anything useful, and I quickly played the move knight f5 because, of course, it has to be the best move, targeting everything. Now these pawns are weak, his bishop is weak. I might be able to get into this square at some point. I thought that was pretty cool. And I was just arguing that my position is better. I have a very strong attack. You don't, and there's nothing that you can do. My opponent goes with the move knight e4, and I realize here that maybe I should have paid more attention to this f6 square, and I was very nervous here. I was genuinely very, very nervous here, because if the knight comes to f6 and roots my king around, maybe there's something there, maybe there's some problem. But I realized there's not a problem. And instead of doing the normal thing, which is just taking here, after knight takes g3, my opponent has to waste a tempo, and I'm better. I can even win a pawn. Actually, this doesn't work at all. Oh, I win this pawn. Ah, okay, lovely. But either way, I play another pretty nonsensical move. He's attacking the c5 pawn. I can defend the c5 pawn with like queen e7 at the very least, if I really can't find anything else. But I play b6, and this is just like the worst way of defending the c5 pawn. This is the worst way of defending the c5 pawn because now these pawns are just weak for all future positions, and I was honestly a little bit worried about queen a4. I guess I'm wrong, but I was just a little bit worried about queen a4 because this seems like a lot of pressure here. My opponent might be able to get something strong in the future, and I was just unsure if there was anything here for black. So it was just like, oh man, b6 was stupid. Now after knight f6, I realized king f8 was obviously the best move, and I thought, okay, well, this is fine for me. My opponent goes queen a4, and I'm winning again, but again, this is a very terrible game. I don't find the right move. I played queen c7 in like a minute because I'm stupid and I don't deserve being at 2200. Probably should be more like 600. And yeah, I just overreacted to this attack. What I can do immediately is play this move knight takes g3. After f takes g3, then I play queen c7. I get some pressure here. This check is going to be powerful and I'm going to be a lot better. But I don't see this. And instead I go queen c7 immediately. Rook ae1 is the move chosen, and now I kind of went for some stupid tactic because I was like, oh, I love tactics. I think that tactics are cool, and I think that I want to go for cool tactics. But it's just stupid. I can just take here. Bishop e3, king h2, I'm winning, king g7. Like, it's just game over. It's just game over here. My opponent has no play, and I have like the perfect piece coordination. There's nothing for my opponent to do. But instead of that, again, I do another stupid thing. I don't do that. I go with the other version of things, which is bishop e3, because I'm like, oh, well, if you take my bishop, I'm going to take your bishop, and I'm so cool. I found a cool tactic. But that is not how chess works. That is simply not how chess works. My plan was that after f takes e3, which is played, and knight takes g3, I thought that his rook was trapped, which is kind of correct, because after takes, I played d takes e3, and I'm winning the rook. The rook is trapped, and I was like, that's cool. But, and the other threat was just this, because the pawn is pinned, right? So I was like, that's really cool. But it's simply not. My opponent can just play bishop h2, attack my bishop, and I would be losing. Instead, f takes e3, knight takes g3, and my opponent finds a very, very nice move. My opponent here, actually, sorry. No, my opponent does not find a very, very nice move. But I was thinking about some things here. I was thinking that maybe he had some play with like e takes d4 in some lines. After takes, there's some pressure on my king. He has this big pawn wall in the center. I was unsure if this was any good for me. So I was just a little bit nervous. But it's all good for me. It's all good for me. And my opponent doesn't find the best move. The best move was knight g5. The best move was knight g5, and I don't actually have that much. After king g7, I would lose. So I have to take the rook on f1, and after rook takes f1, I have to play bishop f5, blocking any path over here. And then after e4, I have to contend with some areas, but I play knight takes e5, e takes f5, e takes f5, and this position is reportedly equal, with actually black being up a point of material, but it's seeming like the farthest thing from equal ever, with me being down 2 pieces for the rook, and it's just, this position I would not want to play. Let's just put it that way. This position I would not want to play. Like, you couldn't pay me money to play that position. But either way, knight takes g4. I take back with the h-pawn. Knight takes g4 is a stupid move because, I mean, kind of obviously, right? Because he just has no play anymore. Like, he's just out of play. Knight g5. And I have a couple moves that work. My opponent is clearly threatening. Knight takes here. Because of the pin. Attacking with the queen and the king. Do I see that plan? No. I don't see that plan. Why do I not see that plan? Because I am stupid. The only move that I saw was rook takes f2. F7, sorry. Trading everything and grabbing the knight. A little bit worried about that one, but not really worried about the other one. Should I have been worried about the other one? Yes. I should have been worried about the other one. There's a couple of moves here that win the game for black. They're all basically the same thing. If I go knight f5, this is surviving. But after e4, I have to play knight takes e4. I have to find this whole sequence, and I give back a knight. But at the end of the day, I have a very strong attack against his king. His knight's about to get booted, and life is actually very, very good for black. I didn't play that move, I'll tell you that. The other move that I can play, it's basically the same move. There's two moves here that basically do the same thing. I can play d takes e3, allow this, lose the queen, and this is just an unstoppable checkmate here. There's nothing he can do. The other move is just rook takes h4 first, and after we get into the same line, I just play d takes e3, unstoppable checkmate, same thing. It's all the same thing. Instead of that, after knight g5, I take the rook, because what could be more natural than taking the rook and being up in exchange? And after rook takes f1, I don't find the right move. There's one move here that's equalizing for black. Honestly, I probably should pause the video and look for it. It's very, very tricky. I honestly don't even really understand it, but yeah, I'm just gonna show it to you. The move is b5. I mean, like, what are we doing here? We're losing everything. I just thought, oh, I can't even go there. I go king e7. Here, b takes a4, taking the rook. This position is what I have, where at the end of the day, black is better because black just has better placed pieces, and these pawns are weak, I guess. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to find this. I wouldn't be able to find this line. I would not be able to find this line with both of these pawns on the wrong square. White is just cramped, I guess. White just has nothing. Okay, whatever, engine. I don't care. Knight takes e5 is the move chosen, and I just missed this move, and I lose. So that was fun. Yeah, that was some good game analysis. That's all I've got for you today. That's kind of where my headspace is at. I was winning a couple of games, and then I'm losing a bunch of games. The other funny move is that knight d8 just doesn't work here because of rook takes f7, and I can't take back with the knight because of this fork anyway. And if I trade here, I'm just losing. There's just literally nothing I can do. I just lose all the pawns, and it's just game over. But whatever. You win some, you lose some. This game was really, really awful. I was just completely winning if I played knight takes g3. If I really did anything, if I played king g7, well, not here, obviously. Let's say king g7. Like, I could just play king g7, and life is fine. Life is good. I would probably win this game. Yeah, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found this entertaining, instructive, all of the above. This is a game that I didn't really want to talk about, but because I didn't really have much content today, I decided to make a video on it. Either way, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found this entertaining, instructive, all of the above. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, don't learn what these YouTubers tell you to do. And yeah, that's it. Good evening and good night.